Welcome to Indiepocalypse Radio, the show that is so ahead of recording. I was recording before I should have been recording. Now I have to remember to delete that recording and get it out of here. We're back, of course, with another edition of the show that is somewhere between just hanging out and an interview show, leaning probably further on the hanging out side. I'm Andrew, your host of that aforementioned Hangout Indiepocalypse Radio. The organizer, creator, all that, etc. stuff of Indiepocalypse. So we are here with a couple of guests from that aforementioned monthly anthology of alternative games. We are here first with who you may know from issue 51. Here we have a fun thing where I have to say a word out loud that I have only ever read in my head, but I think I might know the word. With Paradolia, right. Evil Eye, is Jules Empowered. Jules, how are you doing today? Was that correct?
Sort of. I guess yes. I am going to say yes, just because the way I say it is more on my native language. So it would be pareidolia, but that is a Spanish thing. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
you did great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Perfect. Yes. I was never good at the acts. Like, for as good as I was at Spanish, going through schooling, I was not good at the pronunciation of it, like the accent of it all. But the language, it's one of the things I should like refresh myself on that so I can actually know it.
That's fine. You can take your time learning it whenever you want, because I do have to admit, as almost everyone that speaks any language, honestly,
Yeah.
Spanish is kind of hard. So
Yeah.
yes, I
I
understand
I
that.
I like a lot of like the fundamentals still like exist within my brain, and like if I watch a film in Spanish, I can like piece together the subtitles to what they're saying,
Yes.
versus if
Yes,
I
of
was like
course.
watching a movie in like Italian, I would be like, I guess that's what they're saying. I'm gonna trust you on this one, buddy. Um,
Yeah, no, not even I, because Spanish is kind of related in some ways to French, to
right.
Portuguese, to Italian. I can only understand like 10% of whatever is happening on those movies if I don't watch them with subtitles, honestly.
Right. You're like I'm catching these romance language like root words, and like kind of picking up on those. But yes, it's. But if I have the luxury of a lot of people speaking English, um,
Yeah.
so I take advantage of that.
Of course, yes. If you ever needed actually to learn a language for communication with other people around the world, I would advise you learn either Chinese, English, or Spanish.
Yes,
Those are the big three, I think.
yeah, and
So
living in the
yeah,
U.S., Spanish, it feels it's not. I think it's our second most spoken language. If I am correct, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it feels as
probably.
if that Spanish is likely
Yeah,
our second most spoken. So I'm like, oh, that seemed like the sensible one to learn.
yeah, probably. It is great, honestly. And yes, yes, I did the pareidolia. I did publish something that has to do with finding faces in every place. A lot of people tell me that they get paranoia whenever they play the game, so I guess I'm sorry.
Yes. If people are unfamiliar, how would you describe? You kind of hinted at it, but how would you describe what this game is?
Yes. Pareidolia, pareidolia. I don't know how you would say it in English, but
Yeah.
specifically, pareidolia is the phenomenon that happens with us when we look at an inanimate object and we see a face on it. We recognize a pattern and identify it as something familiar. In this case, I am talking about faces.
Yes.
Think about like when you look at a car and you think that it is smiling or grinning at you, basically.
I've got
That
good
is a
news for
favorite.
you, Jules. Pareidolia is the word we use in English. It's a
Oh, yeah.
it's a loan word.
Oh, that's great. Great. I'm sorry. Uh, but yeah, that is a pareidolia.
Yeah.
Game is basically about you while you're walking, if you end up finding or looking at a pareidolia after someone looked badly at you, uh, you have to basically hunt curse. They it is really hard to explain this.
Yes.
My brain is getting scrambled right now.
No, it's an abstract like uh, concept to play. Um,
Yeah.
so like there's a trickiness to like there. Well, I mean, there's actually like on your page there's a playthrough, so to speak. Um,
Yeah,
uh, uh,
yeah,
uh,
that is the other thing. If you ever wanted to like see an example of play for Pareidolia in the page of the game, there is actual playthrough made by Caden Rumstock.
yes,
Um,
friend of the show and contributor as well. Uh,
yes, yes, really nice guy, honestly.
uh,
Um, So yes, it's basically something that you play when you're walking on the park. It is a sort of RPG, TTRPG,
yeah,
LARP game, sort of. I when I made it, I didn't think of the tags that I would put in. I
right.
just tried to make something experimental. I like to get a bit weird with my things, honestly.
Right, and a lot of the benefit of I talk about this on the show. A lot of the benefit of tabletop is that you don't need to, like program things, so you can just like write weird concepts and don't have to worry about like a computer misinterpreting the ideas. Uh, you have the great benefit of, oh well, it's a human being that works with it. They'll figure it out.
Yes, yes, of course. This is something that I have been thinking about for a while since I made this. I made this as a part of a project for college. It was called "Your Body's Not a Fish," in reference to the tip that if you are having, I think it's called a hiccup.
Yeah.
If you're if you're having hiccups, you can stop them by thinking really hard. You're not a fish, and I made a specific collection of small games, small things, experiments that I ended up publishing, and one of them is Paridolia. I had a question after that. Not a question. Like I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
I do remember that I was really happy that I could like get involved and start making something because I have been wanting to do that since I was in high school, but I couldn't push myself to actually start until I entered the jam, the one page RPG jam. It was really great. But then I saw a comment on Reddit that said that it is extremely like detrimental to all of the theme. And I don't know if this also applies to games. I am not a game developer,
Right.
but he did say that he thought that it's bad for a lot of like games with not a lot of like clear ideas and experimental things that how do I say this? He said that the amount of games that get created today are basically unimported games just because of the giant amount that end up flooding the market.
Sure.
And I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't know what you think,
Well,
honestly.
I mean, the secret is that everything we make is important. Uh, so I mean, he's right in a way, but like I think that it's like people's obsession with like making like the proper canon, of like these are the of the feeling, the need to experience everything, and in order to experience everything there needs to be a very finite amount of like quote unquote good things that come out every year, and the rest is just
Yes.
like extra junk and whatever. It's like, really, there are more things in like I've said, if people stopped making art right now, and we could do nothing but experience art for the rest of our lives, and we all lived to like 100, and we spent 24 hours a day with it, we would never finish. We still would never finish. There is humanity has made too much art since its existence for one person to
Yes.
experience all of it.
Yes. It is a really like strange feeling to see that coming because I thought that making this kind of product, this kind of art.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to denominate that because after all, you can say that everything is art if it's approved as it, basically. So I just thought, I think people need to get a lot more weirder with things. I think people need to accept that junk also has a particular, like, uh how do you say, a particular extent that you can enjoy.
Yes.
To say it like
No.
that, you
I
know.
I have an affection for bad art, quote unquote.
Yeah,
The whatever that means, and that kind of thing means different things to different people, of
of
like,
course.
but there, and it comes in different phrases. Like sometimes people like kind of like junk food stuff, which is you think of as like, oh, perfectly like the potato chip of art. Like it fills my belly, it tastes fine. Like whatever the equivalent of the salt is that makes you keep eating it. Uh,
Yeah. Yes,
uh,
of course.
yeah, that's. I mean, there's tons of a lot of those could be arguably like a lot of like games as service kind of games or like battle pass kind of stuff. It's like maybe it does feel good to make your number get up and get a new shiny thing every 3 hours or whatever. Uh,
Yes.
but it's all
Yes,
these all like different experiences.
of course. And I just remember something, but maybe I will comment on that later because we were just talking about before. Actually, no. When you on the first recording, we were
Yeah.
talking about uh like that it is like really hard to maintain like development for a game or any kind of passion project
Right.
because of money, of course. And I do understand that it is like uh honestly very valid reason for people to think I need to follow a path of development that I know it works, and that is understandable. Um, because I think in that position I would do it too, honestly, to a certain degree. But at the
Right.
same time, I think we have to get a bit of a wiggle room on the or whenever we have like the ability to actually produce something without having to worry much about how are we going to be living next month
Yes.
when we are at a safe place. Yes, when
I
we're at a safe place, I think we can like try to release a bit of that on smaller projects, and I don't think that's bad because I think there is a sort of uh like common phenomena that most developers or game creators or artists try to do grandiose works sometimes,
yeah.
and yeah, not all the time you can make that. You need to do something else. I
Right.
think
Right.
you can practice with smaller things.
Yeah. I think there needs to be like. I mean, this is a lot of the things that that I'm trying to do. Obviously, is there needs to be a smaller, like a healthier kind of like in between space between like professional and hobbyist. The kind of like I'm sure there's a word for it that I'm blanking on. That kind of like pro hobby space, of like, oh yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I make games, but occasionally I will go to like a craft fair and sell them. I'm not joining every Discord and on like whatever social media constantly promoting my work, but I'm making it, and I want other strangers to see it, you know, because
Yes.
even within the hobbyist space, like it, I think a lot about how the unfortunate part of how much like money makes people like having a price tag on something makes people pay attention to it in a
Yeah.
way where
Yeah.
like uh it's, sometimes it can be easy to get lumped into like, oh, all the it's I mean it's the stark difference of like people placing that importance on Steam because Steam was a place where you paid for games and itch was the free place or whatever. um and I think some subcultures thrive within the free space better, but some don't. Speaking of itch and these spaces. Jules, I have an important question for you that I need to ask of every uh, Indiepocalypse contributing guest, which is,
All right.
how did you find Indiepocalypse? How did you find it? How did you find Indiepocalypse?
Interesting. All right. Let me try and think because, all right, I think I have, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I did, I saw in the apocalypse first on like the front page,
Okay.
on the featured things, honestly, on the list feature like uh games and things like that. I do remember that I saw it there, and I did not think anything else about it because I did saw the number the first time that I entered each. I can't remember when it was. So I saw it and I thought, oh, that seems nice. I assume that it's like a fanzine or
Right.
something else, fan sign, and I just went on with my life. Then, after publishing my first game on the one page RPG jam, I started looking at other jams and I ended up making other things and things like that. And then I looked at something because I was looking for jams that accepted TTRPGs. And I saw in the Apocalypse, paying anthology 51. And I, I was like, I reminded that that existed. I looked again at the front page. I saw it again and I started like investigating a bit on it. And I thought it was a really cool project, a really cool idea, honestly, because I do think that um, we small creators at that point need to help promote each other, help like at least grow out a bit on our local virtual scene, which is extremely small.
Right.
Uh, and I really like wanted to see if I could participate. And I was just working on Paridolia and the other things of your body is not a fish. And I ended up like applying to. I ended up getting an entry on the jam at that time, and fortunately, I got picked, and I was really happy about it. I was honestly really excited because I thought it was a great opportunity to contribute to something that would uh, like accompany other creators, and I really wanted to see what everyone was doing. Honestly, yeah, I think that was the way I ended up meeting
Okay.
the thing. Yes.
Yes, because that is the important part to me of like, well, it's eternal survival is how do people continue to find it? So I have to,
Yeah.
I make sure to ask, well, how did people? And a lot of times it's, oh, I was just on itch, which is really just like the best solution because it means it's nothing I did other than continue to make it. Uh,
Yes. Right now, I am looking at the front page, and there it is in the Apocalypse 61. Go get it now.
yeah, it usually pops on there every other issue or so. Um,
Yes.
to keep things fresh, I suppose. But yeah, the the itch front page is handy. I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, what are these guys? Um, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on itch, and there's all these
Yes.
different like kind of kind of like subcategories, of games, and I feel like there's or like you can see like different subcultures that like don't interact with each other at all. Um, all
Yeah.
kind of exist in a way on itch. Um,
Yeah. We're a really great group of rapscallions, honestly.
yeah, there's a lot. Oh, let me look at this. There is a lot going on there, and it is like a lot of cool stuff. And who's um and I'm sorry, I was just looking at stuff. um,
Yeah, of course, you're looking at the next thing to pick up.
uh,
Honestly, extremely understandable.
the,
Yes, I am also looking. It's
yeah,
great.
yeah, the,
I really enjoy checking daily, honestly, the games and physical games and tools and everything. I love browsing itch.io,
yes,
honestly.
I I use my I mean I follow every single person that contributes and I use my feed of recommend of their collection and ratings all the time. Uh,
Yes.
I add every single one to a giant uncontrollable list uh, to
It must be pretty good.
to try and like keep on touch of things, because there are
Yes, of
like
course.
so many people always constantly making games, and it's like
Yeah,
how can how can you keep track of all these people?
of course. But hey, sometimes you end up finding your next inspiration on a colleague, or another game dev, or
Right,
another
right.
friend.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
never know like when is like the next person you're going to find that's like, oh yeah, I had never heard about this person, and then you just like you find them, after maybe they've been doing something for like 5 years, and
yes.
you just happen to never come across them.
Yes, you ended up like glazing over them. And yes, that is understandable at the same time. Recommendation is try to check out all the work of other people, if you can, if you're available to. Um,
Yeah,
Sometimes that is a really great exercise to just see and think, oh yeah, there is other people in the world also making the things I am passionate about, and you might find that you are passionate about those things, and you can try to get into contact and make friends and things like that. Yeah,
right,
it's
right.
really great for socialization,
Yeah,
honestly.
and you can't underestimate also just like the strength of just being like aware of other people, of being like, oh, that person made a cool thing. I'm gonna try
Yes,
and see what they're doing, check them out. Um,
of course.
Speaking of, how do I do this? Speaking of people who are eternal questions and keeping up on things and learning more about people, because I have two eternal Indiepocalypse questions to ask you that come up every show.
All right.
First of all, is what's your favorite type of rock?
Rock,
Rock.
like rock music, or rock on
Uh,
like the
Open to
tone.
interpretation.
Hmm. Rock, rock. This is not exactly rock. But I am still going to say it.
Okay.
Uh, First one, Malachite. Second one, Electro Swing.
Perfect. Those are both rock adjacent enough. Second
Yes.
question. Far more optional to answer if you don't have an answer.
All
Um,
right.
which is, do you have a favorite Toho character?
Favorite what? Sorry.
Toho.
Toho.
Yes.
Oh, I I've never played Toho, but I am really looking forward to it. I am really interested in actually playing it. But yeah, I haven't played it. If I had to say a character, I don't know her name, but she has a Metroidvania on Steam, and she looks cool,
Yes.
and I think
Okay.
she can stop the time.
That's correct. Yes. I mean, that's a game to play on Luna Nights. That game is, of course,
Yes, that one.
and that's Sakuya, as we all know, as everyone knows, of course. You know, the maid at the Scarlet Devil Mansion. Where I'm just saying something telling things everybody knows. She throws a lot of daggers, stops time, the usual standard sorts of things.
Yes,
Um,
of course.
but yes, so yeah, that's the neat thing about Toho is that like its giant fan game backlog, is that people can get familiar with it without ever having to worry about a hell of bullets approaching them.
That just seems like an extremely nice, relaxing afternoon to me. Honestly,
Yeah,
that seems really nice.
and
Right.
that said, Jules, we are at the end of our segment here. Thank you for joining
Yes,
me.
of
Um,
course,
we'll be back on the other half of about uh, 2 minutes and 58 seconds. Goodbye for
of course.
now.
Goodbye. I am going into the void. Ah!
Yes.
I blossomed. There were ideas inside of my mind that I
The last
Hello,
time I played
and welcome
Fortnite,
back
that was
to Indiepocalypse Radio. This is the one part where I shout over my guests. That was Liz Scott with Loners Only. We are back here with our second guest, who you may know from the not so fresh anymore Indiepocalypse 61 with Welcome to the Universe. Is Colton Olds. Colton, how you doing? Or are we still on 61? I don't remember, actually.
I think we're still on 61. I think I'm still hot and fresh.
Oh, you are
hi, thanks for having me.
You are still hot. See, that's the problem with me. I'm working on like 63 right now. So I'm like so far ahead of myself. Oh, yeah, 61, you are still the baby of the bunch.
I am still hot and fresh, yeah.
And right at the top of the heap, too.
I'm trying. I'm trying to make my appearance stand out.
First game, secret people, if you want, secret tip to all the Indiepocalypse contributors. If you want to get the first game on the list, submit your game right away. Fill out the form right away.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
so funny.
The order you are on the page is the order you turn in your form to me.
Sick. Well, I
I
was excited.
I just worked my way down. No, that's good. And it also, here's another hot tip. It also works even if you partially fill it out. And then be like, I'll get to it later. I'll finish it later. Because I like to stay fully on top of these things.
I'm glad that's the bright and early club.
Yeah, speaking of being fully on top of things, I'm going to be fully on top of this question this time around, which is, hey, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse? You're fresh in this.
Yeah.
Whereas Jules maybe had to answer this question from a year ago.
I'm just trying to think. It's one of those things where I keep up with the indie space.
Yeah.
I'd say decently well. I ebb and flow with how well I engage with it, but it's always like a consistent space in my mind. And I would definitely say I probably saw someone's project beforehand. They're like, "Hey, I'm going to be in this thing," and then I saw Indiepocalypse from that. I also know I was aware of it from the social justice bundles. I believe like the racial.
Yeah, I think that I believe issue
Justice,
4 is in
yeah.
that first big bundle.
Yeah. And then I'd say just maybe social media in general, just from different posts I see. I was gonna say retweeted. Is that still the lingo these days? I don't know.
Reposted. I
Yeah.
truly, the only good thing to come out of X, the Everything app, is the fact that he changed it to posting and reposting. It's like, when I saw it skeeting, I was like, fucking throw that in the garbage.
Yeah. So
you can either repost things or you can reblog things. Nothing else. I don't want to hear this.
those are the three things that come to mind in terms
Yeah.
of touchstones. Yeah.
Well, there are like I am looking at your own page right now. I'm looking at look at these. There's mild spoilers for next issue within here.
Oh, okay.
Just building a new language. It's also like I always like to see how people are like interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
People go, oh yeah, like that's because my friend such and such was in it. I go, oh, looking at these little like these spider web of devs that know each other.
Yeah. I think I might know what you're hinting at. I won't say, obviously.
Yes,
but,
yes. I mean, you could do the math by going to your page and clicking on the one that says submission Indiepocalypse number 62.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, yeah.
And
no, I
knowing,
have a guess. Yeah.
and knowing which people are past contributors and knowing which people are probably too big for Indiepocalypse, it's not hard to do the math. We're not here to do the math.
For context, I have on my profile games that I think are important to the medium category and doing interesting things within the game space. So if you check my profile out, you'll see some things that I personally recommend as well as my own work.
Yes, I like it when people do that because I often use those as well. I go, what are they? I am someone who like I'll dig into people who are commenting on games I'm looking at because the itch space is so much like, artists supporting other artists generally. There's not a lot of like fans.
Completely, yeah.
Like,
it's very homegrown.
Right. And it's not a lot of like fans in the traditional sense of like, hey, I'm just a fan. I do not make anything. I'm just a fan of things. There's not a lot of those people commenting within itch, except within certain spaces. So it's like, often if you're looking at a cool game, you see someone comment, that's probably another person who probably also makes cool games.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting to see the dynamic of the people that exist on Itch to the lurkers that are just like giving your work good ratings to like the, as you said, like creator participators as well.
Yeah.
Um, so no, it's a really nice space.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have these sorts of kind of low stress spaces, just kind of hanging out. Um, as someone who's like, this is my equivalent is this, because I'm like, I hate being online and commenting on things and being, despite the fact that this is visible, I think there's a different kind of visibility when you're like leaving a comment that never quite works for me. But we've been talking a lot of games, all this game stuff. You made a game.
I did somehow.
Welcome to the universe. If people are unfamiliar with it, it's so fresh and new.
Oh yeah, no, never heard of it.
How would you describe it?
I would describe
Right.
it, and it's one of those things you try to keep tight-lipped because I think
Yes.
that part of my, the magic of the piece for me is people finding out what it is when they
Right.
play it.
Yeah.
But I guess my quick pitch for it would be it is, I should have had this thought up beforehand. It's it- it's at its simplest term, it's putting you in the shoes of either your life or another person's, how you perceive it, and going through little day-to-day moments
Perfect.
and yeah, discovering what's magical about those moments to you.
You don't need to like, and also that's the problem I find I run into at events often is people like, oh, what's this game about? And I go, buddy, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to describe this to you.
No, I'm always very like cute with my log lines where
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this is like, hinting at something or talking about something bigger. But like when people ask me, I'm fine to just talk about things
Right,
because
right.
like, I want them to play it. I don't want to be like, well, it's mysterious.
Right, right. Or it's like I don't have like the like a game like talking to a stranger. Games don't have the easy language for some things sometimes of like,
No, completely. You have to just bare your soul with it a little bit and be like, well, I did this thing and it was like this.
right, right. When you don't have like because gaming is very genre
It's very
forward,
insular.
or
Yeah.
it's very genre and gameplay forward when it comes to describing things.
No, totally. I mean, the word genre is a misnomer in the sense
Right,
that it's not about aesthetics, it's about mechanical importance within a framework.
right,
And other mediums don't have that. If you like sci-fi novels, you like sci-fi aesthetics. If there's not like we don't talk about sci-fi games in the same way we talk about action games that may have sci-fi trappings.
right,
And
right,
that's if you don't know how to explain that, it's very imparsible to people because it's like, well, what do you mean?
right. You
Yeah.
might like someone's like, oh yeah, I like character action games, which might encompass 13 different aesthetic forms.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very non-form driven, and it's very about like what is the mechanical importance of the interactions that you're partaking in. So
Right. And a lot of times when you go into the more experimental space, right, where sometimes you don't have zero frame of reference. You're like, oh yeah, this game plays like a thing you don't like. It just plays like itself.
yeah, it just becomes a word salad.
Right. Or run to the situation where, oh
So I was gonna
well,
say, if you generally like to read, play my game.
yes,
It's a lot of reading.
well, games have lots of reading in them.
Yeah, yeah.
If I can't wait to speed through them and just like hit, go as fast as I can. I'm a
That was one of my funny interactions playing import games at an early age.
yeah.
Was like finding out visual novels from Japan and being like, "What is this game?" And then just like going through a bunch of endless text, and you're like, "All right, I can't wait for the action part to come." And you're like,
Right.
"This is never coming."
Joe's on
Yeah,
you. There is never going to be an action part.
yeah. So then you drop it, and you're like, "Well, that was a bust."
Yeah, I'm part of the illustrious visual novel speedrun community. Of course, you gotta how
Oh, of
fast can you
course.
go into
Yeah.
RenPy and turn on all the settings that let you speed through it. Turn off, stop at unseen text or whatever, and just hit tab and power
Exactly.
through it.
Exactly. I have thought about like, does that really exist? Is that community? Because when I was making my
Yeah.
game, which is, as I said, largely text driven, I was like, is there like a joke like speedrunning community for this kind of activity? I don't know.
Right. That's what I was just wondering as I was framing my own joke just there. I was like, huh. Like, are there people that are like, how fast actually can I activate?
Well,
Like,
because as a developer, I'm having to do that to make sure it doesn't break.
right.
So like that's what comes to mind for me was like, all right, click, 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 click. Oh, does this work? Cool. Does it not? Great. And just trying the different variables to make sure everything's accounted for. So I'm
Right.
I'm doing a lot of that for myself. And then it's like, well, do people actually do this? Was a question I had while doing that. So
Right. Route.
I hope not. Honestly, it's
So like,
but
what's the route?
yeah,
The
yeah.
fastest route through the game. Yeah, it is like, with like that's I mean that itself is part of like what makes games a weird kind of medium, in comparison to like other media. Like it's too big, really. I say this all the time. It's too big to call them all games, and to lump them all in
Yeah.
the same group together.
Well, I think the bigger problem is how we've sanded off or homogenized what it means to like play games in the sense that we've the companies have sold us a lie that if you like games, you like all games. And that should
Right.
not be inherently true for anybody. Like you should like different subsects because you as a person are gravitated towards certain things. But we've created a culture that says, "Oh, if you play X, then you got to play Y." And
Right.
it becomes this like cultural osmosis of not actual individual tastes, but just what is the next big thing. And I think that's harmful for our long-term growth and appreciation of what games are doing because it just makes us play whatever, which is good and bad because it exposes some people to things they wouldn't
Yeah.
otherwise play and under the guise of I'm playing a game. But in the same token, it's like all this stuff gets lost because it's like it's not popular. It's
Right.
not the forefront of people's minds. And you may very much really enjoy that experience, but you've been told that you like everything and then everything becomes super imparsible.
Yeah, that's like, and it all, and like it's funny how much the everything shifts like when something just becomes popular.
Completely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's always a new tail to chase. And we should really want to have people find their own taste in their own spaces within what they like. And it's not maybe something I like or even agree with, but I think people should have the right to have those genuinely rather than
Yeah.
just being like, this is the culture war of what you should and shouldn't like.
Right. You shouldn't have to wait for Elden Ring to be like, no, I actually like Kingsfield. I think it's actually really
Yeah.
good.
No, totally. Well, and it's crazy because like the equivalent of that is like, if you tell a Marvel guy like, hey, I think you should check out the the work of Jean-Luc Godard, and they'd be
Right.
like, what are you talking about? But like we kind of have that in games a bit where it's just like, oh, if you like this, you should just play this. And it, it,
Exactly.
it
Right.
makes it makes no sense. It's like, well, that's clearly not your taste. And
I.
don't get me wrong, I want you to expand out of your taste and see new experiences.
Right. Right.
But then by doing that, you go, oh, I do or don't like that, and you kind of inform yourself.
Yeah.
Where there's no informing yourself in games.
Right. Right. It's like I know the last scene of Endgame's left you breathless. So let me tell you about this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's this, but like you never know when someone's like kind of like, oh wait, I didn't know that I like this thing.
Completely, and you
Uh,
should never shut that down. No,
right.
no. But I think phrasing it in the sense that I'm a gamer or I like games
Yeah.
doesn't really get the core of what you like about things.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
It's like an impossible. It is that weird thing of it is too a big cluster. Too one
no,
giant
totally.
clump
Because
of
there are people that can just say, I like books, I like movies, but those are way more few and far between the
right.
people. It's like, oh, I like action movies, I like romance movies.
Right.
But like the dominant form of the conversation within games is I like games, and that's problematic.
Yeah, like, and the people who are saying I like movies, when you ask them what kind of movies they like, they probably narrow it down very quickly. Of like, oh, I like I mean, I watch a lot, but what I really like is, the person's like, oh yeah, I
Totally.
watched all the Oscar things, but then you go to their house and it's all like fucking, they have the 2 Shawscope box sets or whatever, and all they watch is old kung fu movies. And they go, yeah, well, I
Yeah,
watched The
yeah.
Brutalist too. Or,
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I mean, games also have the problems. I talked about this. Someone mentioned this on a recent episode, and we think about a lot. Like games are just also very long, um,
Yeah, yeah.
which
Well, games ask a lot of you
yeah,
that is not expected of other mediums because of that experiential aspect. You have to actively participate in games, which can be emotionally and physically exhausting at times.
yeah,
Whereas, like, it's more about the emotional intensity of an activity in something like a book, a painting, a
right.
movie that
You
would make you feel that way. You know,
you could
but
find your way through the entirety of probably the French New Wave movement in the time it took you to play Persona 5.
oh yeah, yeah, and you at least have a good history on it.
Right,
But yeah, but like games are like wanting to create experiences that are lived in. And I think, as you said, like sometimes I think they can be too long, but I think length shouldn't be the dominant factor of how we view games
right.
either. But that is once again, it's like the dollar to value proposition where it's
Right,
like for some reason people are like, well, if I spend $20, that's got to give me 20 hours of something. It's always like a 1-to-1 conversion.
right,
And
and it kind of like drives up. Like I think artificially, a lot of the times drives up the length of things.
no, completely, because it's like, well, I have to get the dollar proposition. People don't refund my game, or
Right.
like say it's terrible,
I can't put
and
my
like
hour-long game on Steam. People are like, I love this game. I refunded it.
I mean, I think movies have a similar thing in a
Yeah.
way where like people are more likely to call your movie a masterpiece the longer it is because
Right.
they had to endure it,
Right. And how many people
regardless
are
of what
watching
they
short
thought of it.
films?
No, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think length definitely does skews people's perception of things where if you invest time in it, you must perceive it as good because
Right.
you invest a lot of time in it. So if you're not going to admit you wasted time if you put a lot into something. So
Yeah. You just like,
so
well,
I think games have a problem with that where they're like, I want to be liked. The game is hungry, as a thing, as an object. And so length is an easy way to be likable, honestly.
yeah. It's like and that's the debate of it. What if a game you can just play forever? You never have
Yeah.
to. You never have to stop. You never have to stop. It's just eternal updates or whatever,
Totally. Totally.
and that kind
Yeah.
of
And
thing.
I want people to do other things with their time.
Right.
I think it's beautiful that people play my game, but like I want the world to exist outside of my game. I think that's very important,
Yeah.
that people see and have different experiences. Like because if you are just exclusively playing games, you're just only getting an exclusive viewpoint on life.
Right.
Like you're not seeing life itself. You're just seeing the one thing. And I want you to go outside. I want you to have interactions with people. I want you to do things. I think games can facilitate those things, but oftentimes we use them as a means to go inward rather than outward.
Right. And there's so much like right in the fight for the artist to constantly see like I want people to pay attention to my art. You forget there's life. Sometimes you can just go outside and sleep in the sun, and that's a part of living your life.
Totally. And I think that's valuable. I
Yeah.
think I think what games should do should enrich your life and give you weight to those experiences. And I think it's really frustrating when games are holistically about themselves in the sense that they just want to seek all of your attention. I think
Right.
escapism is fine to a certain degree, and I think that's fine and dandy. But when that's all you as a person are seeking out, I think that's problematic. And I think a lot of our games are designed to be these insular, repetitive loops. And I
Right.
think that's I wish the game would point outward a bit more at times, or have more landing points or endpoints. But we've decided that fun should be addictive or pleasurable in a sense that is compulsory.
Yeah.
And
Right. In terms of like if you want to see all these things, you have to like be online all the time. You have to be playing.
mhm.
You have to do your hourly check in with this game.
Yeah, yeah, and like I wish we took a step back and reassessed as a culture rather than being like, well, I think it's fun. Well, yeah, you think it's fun because they want you to think it's fun.
Right. Slot
Like
machine's very fun to jam on those buttons, and all
yeah, exactly.
and all the
There's a
sounds they
there's a
make.
there's a book that's really heavy in some certain design
Yeah.
circles called Addiction by Design, and it's talking
Yes.
about like the way casinos make you have compulsory habits with different gaming things. And a lot of game designers now kind of point to that and be like, we're doing the same things. And
For a
that's
second,
maybe not.
I thought you were gonna say they
Yeah.
use it as a guiding post.
I mean, I think people could,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But I think most of the time the reaction is like, oh, wait a second.
Right.
Maybe that's not what we should be doing. I hope that's like there's a bigger warning bell to people at gaming at large. I don't want to be doom and gloom about this,
Yeah.
because games are wonderful. I love games. Games are great.
Oh,
Hooray!
I hate games. I tricked you onto the platform that hates games.
No, but yeah.
No,
But I think more people should ask themselves why they make games or what their
Right.
part in making games is and what they want to do in games rather than just chase the tail of what they perceive a game to be.
That
you
is
know?
like when I come to the problem of what games am I looking for, the games that I'm not looking for are games kind of like that. Like the question I'll ask myself when I'm playing a game like that is like, why did you make this? Like, who did you make this for? Does it feel like it's anybody? Like anybody made this
Totally.
for anybody?
Mm-hmm,
It feels like somebody made the idea of what a video game looks like.
I think people. I don't think it's always so arbitrary. Is not the word I want to use.
Right.
I think people are genuinely making these things.
Yes.
I just think their bubble of what they see games as is more
Right.
limited in that sense.
It's
Where it's like,
it's the
I want to make a
classic Boss Baby
Metroidvania.
problem.
Exactly. It's I've been exposed to X, Y, and Z, and this has informed all my opinions, and
Yeah.
therefore this is all I perceive the medium to be, and all I want the medium to be, frankly. And so I want to just make this.
Right.
And I think making things that inspire you is a great, wonderful thing, but I think you should also add elements of yourself into those things
Right.
and make them very personable and statement driven, and that it couldn't have come from any place but you. And unfortunately, I think so many people go like, well, I like this thing, so I have to make it in this way.
Yeah.
And they don't go, oh, you know what I would really like? I would really like this one character that talks in this corner about X subject for who knows how long because I like X subject. And you have
Yes.
just made your game 10 times more interesting because you put your personality in it.
Yeah, and that's the whole also. You run into the problem like this is stuff. It's also the thing. The thing I always get nervous about when people ask me like, oh, I should submit my thing when I'm like, I don't know what they make, and it's like also like I always tell people like you never know what my tastes are.
Yeah.
It's a thing that I like is not necessarily a thing that other people will like.
No,
and
it's
vice
not
versa.
it's not a judgment call for like
Right.
your thing is inherently bad. It's just I didn't like it, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
I don't like tons
we
of
should,
things.
we should be more frank about being what we like and don't like, and not in a rude way. Don't be
No,
like a
yeah.
jerk, obviously, but it's you shouldn't have to compulsorily like something in a wave of people.
Okay.
If you genuinely don't align with that, don't align with that. That's
Like,
fine.
How many people? It's a thing. Like, it feels like it comes from people who are like mostly just online. Because all
Yeah.
of my regular offline friend group dislikes a lot of things I like, and
Yeah.
similar. Like we don't have a lot of the same. Like we have touchstones, but it's not like
Mhm.
we have extremely homogenized tastes.
Yeah.
And
I think there's just a big way where marketing is more important to the product to a lot of people, and it's
Right.
about like the moment of things rather than the actual things they interact with themselves.
Right.
Which to a degree I think is cool. Like it's like, oh, I want to interact with other humans. I want to talk about things with you. I think the fundamental impulse behind that is good, but I think it's been weaponized
yes,
to a degree to make everything an event. And
Right,
that's what's
right.
harmful.
Right, because it's like, oh yeah, if I spend enough money, I will become that thing that everyone wants to talk about. There's, I always paraphrase it poorly, but that line from We Must Divest from the Video Game Industry about it's like the idea of isn't it convenient? We're very fortunate that our most advertised games are also our best games. But speaking of conversations being parts of conversation, Colton, we have two questions for you. I hope you're prepared.
I did. I googled a lot.
What's your favorite type of rock?
I'm debating between two examples.
Okay.
The first one that comes to mind is a very basic one, but Igneous Rock, because a
Yes.
musician I like has a very early track called Igneous Intrusion. A.G. Cook. It's one of his early works before
Okay.
he got famous. And so I'm gonna say Igneous on lack of him.
Yes.
And Antelope Canyon in I believe Arizona is where it is. It's very beautiful. So that's my actual like probably like beautiful rock.
Perfect. I now and follow-up question. I was gonna go on a weird tangent, like but it's one of those
No,
tangents like only makes sense in your. You know, one of those things that you say that's like only makes sense to you, or it's like people go, "Ah, that's I guess so." Anyway, it's like when you mishear
yeah.
something, we go, "Huh, I guess you misheard that." Okay. Um, but do you have a favorite Toho character?
Um, the only one that came to mind was Reimu, the
Okay.
protagonist.
Yes. I mean that's
So,
hey. Sometimes you like the protagonist.
it's been a while since I played a proper Toho game. I think the last one I played was or 9 or 10, something like that. And I have a few of the spin-offs, or not spin-offs, but
The fan games.
fan games. Yes, yeah. But yeah, just for pure lack of imagination, I'm gonna say say that.
Well, we're not beholden to imagination here.
No, completely. No, imagination sucks.
Yeah, listen, if just find. Listen, we've seen a lot of stuff, but really the secret to game development is find like some fucking guy's blog on how to make the most successful game and just do that.
Completely disregard everything I said. Imagination is worthless,
Yes,
and you should always chase whatever is popular.
the so that 6 years later, when you actually finish your game, it will 100% still be popular.
Yep,
Uh,
yep.
have you
Yeah.
heard of Harvest Moon? I recommend
I have
making
I have Heart of His Moon. Yeah, which
might
is now
recommend
Story of
making.
Seasons now, I believe.
Yes, I think that might have been like one of those translation things.
It was the right thing.
Yeah,
Basically, from what I understand, one of the companies owns the name to Harvest Moon,
yeah.
and they had actual disagreement with the people that make Harvest Moon in Japan, and so they kept the name Harvest Moon and made their own Harvest Moons, while the other company that makes the real games had to go, well, what do we do now with our name?
We make
So,
Story of Seasons.
like Story of Seasons now. Yeah,
And then Natsume still owns it, and presumably,
correct. Yeah,
and then whoever properly made those way back in the day.
yeah.
Oh, is it Hand? I've never actually looked at this. Is it?
Who makes Harvest Moon?
Yeah,
Is it Marvelous who publishes them now? I don't know.
maybe Marvelous made. Let me. Anyway, it might have been maybe
Yeah,
it might have been Marvelous, and then there was a Marvelous Natsume split. You know what?
yeah.
The way I find this is not to go through the Natsume catalog; is to look for Story of Seasons and work from there. Uh, yeah, because it is Marvelous.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
So they have Story of Seasons, and then
Well, I think I don't know how it all split because I think they were under the Japanese branch of Natsume. I don't know. It's all confusing. It's right. Yeah.
yes, right,
It's probably not even the quote unquote the same people anymore, anyways. But you know.
right, exactly. Amkiss doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. The initial developer, were they Natsume Eternal? I don't know. I'm not a
Go
gaming.
go to Moby Games. Moby Games in the chat,
Yeah,
folks. You know, shout out
look
to Moby
at it.
Games.
Monstania. What is Monstania? Anyway, it's got one person gave it 2.3 stars. Oh, Packet Video published this. Wait, Packet Video is Marvelous?
Yes, for a long time, like on the Super Nintendo era. Yeah.
I what? I did not realize Packet Video. It's one of these things that just like I'm learning slowly as I like
It goes deep. It goes deep.
that I did
Yeah.
not realize that Packet Video was Marvelous. Uh, folks, play some Packet Video games.
Yeah.
Get on the NES. What's the one I'm thinking of? Not the Rambo one. I'm thinking of another one that I like actually is like. I mean, Rambo is kind of cool, but what am I thinking? Anyway, we're gonna go on break. We're not gonna obsess. We'll get back. We'll start talking about Packet Video.
Play packing video games on break, guys. You know.
Yeah, you start firing up Rambo. Oh, Die Hard is what I was thinking. They made that cool Die Hard game.
On the NES?
Yeah.
Or which one? Yeah, because I was playing the one on the TurboGrafx recently. So.
The
But
NES Die Hard
it's
has a
pretty
foot meter.
that game has like almost an immersive sim.
Yes. But we're gonna go on break and then we'll come back and
Speaking
get
of word babble.
right. What's an ImSim? Warren
Yeah.
Spector. Calling on Warren Spector. We're gonna go on break. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Chumps with Love Life, talking about also things that have issues with genre and everything. I like music that has issues with like what genre do you jam this thing into.
Yeah.
We're back with the whole crew. I've talked about it on the show multiple times. Oh, I'm blanking on it. It's probably just called Casino Sounds. Is it that what it's called? I have an ambient album that I like that is sounds of a casino.
Sounds of a casino.
Yeah.
Interesting. We love non-conforming genre things,
Yes.
especially music.
Yeah. You know, what is an IMSIM? What is it? What are the IMSIMs of music? You know, what is... people aren't asking the hard questions. Everyone wants to know what the Citizen Kane of video games is. Uninterested.
Yeah, no. Why would we need a Citizen Kane? I would like to meet Citizen Bobby, the normal guy.
What is the Breathless of video games? what's the what's the Don Quixote of video games? Asking all these other questions that people are too afraid to ask.
The Don Quixote of video games.
Is that some mud that we don't know we don't know about?
My first instinct for the French New Wave of games is work time fun on the PSP and PS1. Yeah, I don't know. That's very kind of French New Wavy. I don't know. It's probably not the best answer.
No, the thing is, there's not. I mean, it's the genre problem in games. You know, we don't have.
Yeah.
They're of being gameplay focused rather than like aesthetic and like thematic focused.
Yes.
So you can have.
I still don't understand the Game Awards like having the adventure category. I'm just asking, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. Every game is an adventure. Why are you saying it like that?
Right, but even within okay, I'm gonna point and click and I'm gonna have an inventory. You know, those games themselves are like different from one another in a lot of ways.
Yes.
You know, it's like you're not necessarily gonna love King's Quest because you like Monkey's Island. Yeah, Monkey's Island. Monkeys.
Oh,
the
and
Monkey's
if you like
Island.
Monkey Island, you're definitely gonna love Police Quest.
Absolutely. And Police Quest 2? If you love Police Quest, you're gonna love Police Quest 2.
It's a great game.
Is that the one I'm thinking of? That's the FMV one, right?
Is that 3? I don't know.
Maybe. No, you're right. I think 3 is the. No, which one is it? Or is it SWAT? What is Police Quest?
SWAT's the FPS.
Yeah. So what's the Police Quest one? That's the FMV one.
I don't know. I haven't played them. I just know the guy that makes them is a weirdo.
Yeah. I mean that's. Anyway, bring back FMV. That's what. Honestly, it's. I think that's what we that actually was the future of games. We just lost sight of things, you know.
Yeah. Well, and this month's Indiepocalypse, you too can bring back the FMV revolution.
You can get your DVD burner out and. Oh man, I was like pumped. I think there is occasionally. It was Police Quest SWAT is what I was thinking of.
Okay.
There is like what I call a little behind the scenes knowledge. There's a thing I call the Hard 11, which is a game that's like, even if they don't submit it ever again, I'm probably just gonna include it in the next issue. I'm probably gonna email them. And I think that was that's a thing that exists in my brain only. Of like, I don't tell anyone like, hey, your game was actually basically the 11th game. So if you submit it, it's 100% going to get in this next issue. Because also, unless like it's an out of control, high quality 10 game or 9 games in the next submission batch, it's probably getting in anyway. And I believe that was Pipe Inspector. Just because they were loosely affiliated with another game that was in 60, you know, of people working together, kind of thing, where. I associate them with Carambola, you know. I believe they worked on that as well. But there are like infinite. Oh, like how long? I'm going back to see how long they've 2004. Right, 2004 is how far. Or 2015. No, it is 2004.
Wow.
2004.
Yeah, I'm
Hey,
looking.
my year of birth.
So okay, this person here, this creative, Plumpocalypse, a pipe inspector, had those things reversed. Have been making games for as long as you've been alive.
Yes. That
That's like
is very sweet.
that is like the kind of like, and that's not just like that's like making indie games. Like I think people. Indie games have existed since the beginning of history. Beginning of people making
Totally.
games.
I mean, the whole UK cassette revolution and just games in general,
Right.
Pong. Pong is an indie game, kind of.
Right.
Not really.
mailing people your games in like plastic baggies.
Yeah, totally.
Like none of it's new, but I think it's more like the very commercialized capital I capital G indie game kind of concept, as a genre.
Mm-hmm.
I think is a newer concept. When of course,
Yeah, because I think it's an aesthetic now.
Right.
It's not necessarily the actual like process of making. It is what does your game prescribe to be in a way.
It's Jeff Keighley says it has pixels in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if like Tencent made it or whatever. As long as
completely.
As long as you have enough pixels, you're an indie game.
It just is.
Which is like a good tip for all those indie devs out there. Make sure to include pixels in your game, to ensure that
Hit with the kids.
Yeah, and then
What if they made a game made of vectors? It's not pixel.
Exact vectors are not indie. Vectors do not count as indie games.
Yeah, that's the conclusion of today's podcast.
Yeah.
Vectors are not indie.
Indeed.
It is like the weirdness of the space of trying to kind of define yourself within the space. Is kind of like one of those almost impossible sorts of things.
Totally.
Yes.
Which,
well, I mean, everyone's trying to figure out where they fit in to a
Right.
certain degree, So it's like, what labels do I adopt? Who am I? What is this? It's
Who are
all
your peers? Who are your friends? Who do you
Yeah.
know?
right. I guess, am I an indie game? I guess I just use the word. I say I'm indie, but what does that mean?
all people are indie games if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, really, Microsoft owns Microsoft. So if Microsoft makes a game, isn't that kind of like an indie game?
Yeah.
That would be on that scale, basically.
Right.
So we are practically all different indie games in different scales because
Yeah.
we all play with each other.
It's all like the kind of like, I mean, that's where my name comes from, is the silliness of the concept of too many indie games,
I looked at this curator that I typed in like indie games, and I got the absolute best indie games on Steam, and like the number 2 thing they recommended is Tomba, which is famously a Sony PlayStation game.
Right.
Made by Sony.
But Tomba is pretty pixely.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, Tomba rocks.
Yeah,
Tomba's great.
I just played Tomba for the first time last year.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yes.
that's cool. Yeah, cool game.
I've been using a lot of. I found that the website and the platform Retro Achievements is a handy like guiding hand if you're like, I don't know, if say for instance if you have a full catalogs of legally dumped ROMs, and ISOs,
Of course.
and you're
Yeah.
like, which ones do I want to launch? And you just look at their monthly or their daily kind of like challenges or whatever, and you're like, maybe I will play Killer 7. I mean, I've already played Killer 7. That's a bad example. Maybe I will play that weird game I forget the name of that has the Kiwi. That actually I think about a lot.
Ivy the Kiwi?
No, it's a different. It's a Super Famicom puzzle game where you're like a kiwi and you like suck in blocks and spit them out, and it has to do with like paint and stuff. I'll get the name of it in a second.
It's not New Zealand story, is it?
It's not New Zealand. That's where you're like a little Kiwi kind
You're a
of
little bird. You're an actual Kiwi in that one. I keep thinking games where you're an actual Kiwi.
No,
Yeah.
New Zealand story, you're a bird, but you have like cool shoes and a bow. All the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Honestly, that sounds like a dream I would have. Honestly,
New Zealand story is cool.
It's a cool aesthetic. I don't know if I never played it. I love how it looks though.
Yeah, it's the. Let me see if I can't find this game, but it's good for like.
By Packing Video.
There we go. Sute Hakun is the name of the game.
Sute Hakun.
Oh, that one.
Yes.
Yeah, they just added that one to the Nintendo Online.
Okay.
Recently.
Oh, so if you're on Nintendo Online, folks, I highly recommend this game. It's like.
It's a really good game. Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like nothing else. And it's super cool.
I was gonna say it's kind of like Load Runner, kind of, but not really.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those games where it's like kind of just like itself, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But it is very cool. It's like puzzle platformer, so to speak, but also like kind of has very kind of like demanding Twitch elements to it sometimes. In terms of like block placement and stuff.
Yeah. No language barrier required.
No,
you
no.
Can play that. Yeah, yeah. So don't get intimidated because you just see a weird Japanese game. You too can play this.
Yes, yes. As someone who was, also playing a lot of 100% legal imports in my youth, we used to, in a really weird kind of mixed of like ethical piracy or whatever, I guess we would burn games to play on our hacked PS2 as like demos.
Okay.
Oh.
Especially for like imports, like it's like, do we want to import this Berserk game? Let's fire it up on the old. Let's just burn an ISO real quick. I'm like, oh, this is kind of sick, actually.
I subscribed to official PlayStation magazine, and every issue came with a demo disc as a kid, and it would occasionally have demos for import games, and I didn't have any way of like actually playing those at the time. But that, like, there's a game called Chain Dive on the PS2, and that became one of my favorite games, even though I only had one level of it, because it was just such a cool aesthetic, and
I'm seeing a very high mark of quality on this, and that the first search result is a Hardcore Gaming 101 post, which is usually a thing I use like as an indicator of high quality. If you've either got Hardcore Gaming 101 or like the Bad Game Hall of Fame in your top search results, buddy, you're in for a great time.
Oh yeah, you're in the right place. I am looking at it. It looks really cool. This seems like the stuff I would play, honestly.
No, it's awesome. It's a little jank with how it plays, but that's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. The other one that was like that was Finny the Fish, which I believe got localized because of the popularity of that demo. I've not confirmed this. I want to do more research, but they had a demo of this weird Japanese fish game, and they're like, "This is cool, guys." And then like I want to say like a few months later, it actually got an English translation like demo as well. So.
Oh, is it like a funny fish? A funny fish with funny faces?
I don't think so. It's like, once again, I think is it Natsume? Or
it's Sega.
Oh, it's actually made by Sega.
Yeah.
It was published by Natsume in America. I did not know it was Sega. Yeah, it's like a action game where you play as it was like a real fish, and you like go around like talking to people and like solving puzzles and stuff. Weird, cool game.
Yeah.
As someone who comes from the port, this is accurate fish life.
Yes.
Yeah, they're doing like a salmon run. It looks like, more or less.
Yeah.
I'm yeah, there is like piracy has been a very great thing in terms of like it's the true champion of game culture, you know.
Oh yeah, and just access in general.
Conservation. Like it is very useful.
For the first, another thing I played for the first time actually this year in 2025, I played Mother 3 for the first time.
Oh, cool! I've played. This is my weird fact.
Yeah.
I only played Earthbound Zero, aka Mother 1. That's the only one of those I've played.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
And so I have no frame of reference for all the stuff people say is really cool.
It was that was one of the things where like one of their monthly challenges was like beat the first chapter or whatever of Mother 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like blown away by that first chapter. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was like, let me actually play this game. But that's also
It's
a
classic
game
for a reason. Yeah.
that's like unlocalized, technically not available in English. You know,
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
but has like a huge like awareness in English because of piracy basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And people in America would not know how good of a writer Shigesato Itoi was.
Right.
If not for this. Yeah.
And that happens in all sorts of places. Like what does anime and manga look like without piracy?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, yeah, it wouldn't be
One
that
episode
much.
VHS tapes that cost you $20 a pop.
Right. Yes. It is like, and the power of like super powerful PCs. I imagine can just play just like any modern game. But like we're getting to the point where you're kind of bog standard. Like, hey, I got a cheap PC. I can still play like PS2 games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people can start to get into like weirder stuff, like where maybe some people wouldn't pay like $60 for like a dog's life, but
Well, I don't know if they should pay $60.
No, they probably shouldn't. But you can if you go to your buddy Vim's house and I'm pretty sure he'll lend it to you.
Oh yeah. I'll lend you my copy of Dog's Life.
Yeah. Yeah, Vim's a good friend. He's got a lot of good games. I recommend you pay him a visit every now and then.
Will do. I'll let him know I'm coming.
He doesn't like try to sell you a bunch of stuff when he's there too. I know like a lot of friends when you try to download when you go to borrow their games, they'll try to sell you a bunch of stuff all the time. But Vim's really cool about it. He's just like he'll remind you every now and then. He's like, "You take up a lot of space in my house. So if you want to throw me a couple bucks, but." What is now? I'm mildly curious about what people are trying to charge for Dog's Life in 2025.
It's not for sale. It's not for. Oh, like you mean the aftermarket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's around 20-30 complete.
That's not bad,
Is
honestly.
it?
Yeah.
Let me check.
Oh yeah, complete in box is 1997. That's not bad.
Hey. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not.
I'm a walking price calculator of video games.
That's not a bad price. I mean that's. CDI was.
I mean, you're not rushing to tell people, "Hey, you must play A Dog's Life."
No. But I will rush to tell them the Philips CDI was right about a lot of things. Multimedia is aware. Sorry. Go ahead.
Have you beat A Dog's Life?
No.
That ending it's so weird.
But
it's
I am
so
aware of
up.
what it like. I do know the end of A Dog's Life.
Yeah,
What
I
happened
actually
at the
played
end?
the game as a teen and was like, this is like so tonally like different from the rest of the game.
Yeah, it is. It's also like fascinating what other people's like teen games were. They're like, I guess it's the game I have because I can't just get 80 million games on Steam nowadays.
Yeah. Oh no, I was a total. I will buy whatever it is as long as it is under $5.
Right.
Proclivity. So like I had a huge. I became a collector just because of no one wanting things.
Yes.
It's pretty much. And now it's the inverse. But no, I would buy games like Stretch Panic for like $1
Yeah.
used because I would just find it in a bin and it would just be there and I'd be like, I'll pay $1 for this, sure. And I guess people wouldn't. It blows my mind. I even today I'm like, why wouldn't you just buy every game you see for $3?
Yeah, and like,
But yeah.
that I mean, and we're this. A lot of culture is lost when you lose the bargain bin.
Completely. It doesn't exist in the same way for like the PS4 and
Yeah.
stuff. And even though I don't think physical media is dead, but the prices are even with inflation are not the same in terms of just the access because
Right.
games are now culturally wanted where I guess they weren't back then.
Right.
Yes.
I think of like the movies I would get that in like those like shitty cardboard cases. That is like you're like, oh yeah, here's like the bargain version of it. Like we don't have like tiered versions of games in the same way.
Yeah. Here's a pan and
Yeah.
scan of Street Fighter.
Yeah, where's my Street Fighter Panic scan?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so much of that is like that we have like different boxes, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and when I say boxes, I mean like consoles. I'm calling them boxes in the same way. We should call them box
Yes.
in the same way. I like to I like the term. That's why I use it personally. I like the idea of calling all games tapes, even
Yeah.
like discs. Let's just call them all tapes.
If you think about it, all boxes are indie games.
They are kind of all indie games, but emulation. Anyway, it lets you to. I had opened my price charting and I was looking at like all my ridiculously expensive games that cost me like $40 when
No, yeah, like what's one
like my two standards that I have are my two complete editions of like those PS1 Persona games.
oh, cool.
Back when like Persona 3 was like still kind of like a niche RPG and that kind of
Mm-mm.
like if you're like like a weird Nippon Ichi freak or whatever, maybe you'll have a copy of Persona 3 as well if you're buying like just Gaia and other
Yeah.
weird Japanese PS2 games.
The one I was thinking of was Echo Night Beyond. I got that at GameStop.
Oh, fuck.
Buy 4 for like $10. So I got it for like $2.50 back in the day. Yeah.
I'm looking at copies of Echo Night Beyond in the year 2024 and I'm pissed off.
Yeah, it's painful. It's painful.
As like the last year I spent a lot. I was like, let me play all these FromSoft games, and I was like, fuck, FromSoft always ruled. I don't know what people.
They did. They did.
I don't know if these game reviewers back then were thinking. These games were always like great.
Do you know the game Eternal Ring by FromSoft?
Yes. Yeah.
Have you actually like picked up a box of it?
I have. There was there was an eternal. There's a consignment shop, like a roadside consignment shop, flea market kind of thing in my town, and there was like a copy of Eternal Ring just like sitting on like something for a long time.
Well, the reason I bring it up is it has one of the funniest taglines on the back of the box of it, where it says, "Who said fantasies have to be final?" It's like this thing on like the very top, and this was like a launch PS2 game,
Right.
Because there wasn't a Final Fantasy at launch on the PS2, so I guess they were like, "Well, we gotta fill the spot."
Yes.
But it's just such a weird way to build a game where it's like it's clearly riffing on like like it's gamer lingo as we talked about insular stuff where it's like someone would, if you didn't know games and you read that and you're like, what does this mean? Like
Right. And if you like Final Fantasy, Eternal Ring is nothing like it at all.
No, exactly. That's what's even funnier. Is it's a first person dungeon crawler.
Random. They just wanted to do that.
It's just another FromSoft game. It's like Kingsfield. We call Kingsfield something else.
Yeah.
And we put like
Actually, didn't
rings in
they
it.
also made like the mecha thing?
Yeah, Armored Core.
Not
Yeah.
Armored Core. The other one. Like,
Yes, the giant
Metal
one.
Wolf Chaos, I think.
Metal Wolf
Yes.
Chaos. Yes, they made that.
Oh, I was thinking of
That is very funny.
the other giant one that I don't think they made the original, but they made like that the Kinect version.
Your Steel Battalion.
Steel
They made
Battalion,
Steel
yes.
Battalion Connect. Yeah, they didn't make the original one, but they made the Connect sequel. Yeah.
Which is another like, folks, if you're out there, I highly recommend going to
Buy Connect.
buy a Kinect. Go down to your local hospital, try to get them to sell you the Kinect they have, undoubtedly have. No, play Steel Battalion if the opportunity arises. If it's like
Yes.
it's a very very unique experience,
That's a beauty to behold. Yeah.
and it's like
Old games are cool. I
Yeah.
don't know if anyone else knows what games we're talking about, and if you don't, play all of them.
right. That is
Yeah.
I think if I
Word
had
soup doesn't have to become word soup. Become Osmos with us.
right, I've been thinking that like people just need like for the good of game culture, people need to take like 2 or 3 years off of the games entirely and play nothing but games from that are at least maybe 15 years old. And
We need some kind of emulation solution. It's like it downloads all these different games, and then it just like has a roulette wheel where it lets you play all of them for like 5 minutes, and you can't play any of them to completion. It's just
Right.
like, oh, and so you get a taste of each one. I think people would be much healthier if they were exposed to a lot of different games
Yeah.
because, that they don't know about. So.
I'm looking at this little copy here of this little fellow here, this little chibi robo guy.
Maybe we're wrong.
Oh,
There is actually a game kind of like what I'm talking about by Bennett Foddy and AP Thompson called Multi-Bowl. It's like this.
oh, I heard about that one.
It's an
Yes.
installation-based game that's really cool, where they went through MAME, an arcade emulator,
Yeah.
and got like paused moments of games in time and of like optimal moments of all multiplayer games. And so it's like a mixtape of multiplayer games where you're playing like 5 seconds of like every like multiplayer game that they could like think of in a row. It's really, really cool.
And you can actually, people are doing things like, I think the easiest way is either through BizHawk. They have like randomizers where it's like you can set it. I think you set on like on damage or on like time, and it will just like jump through random games on a list.
That's real cool.
So there, yeah, right. Not I'm like there's a word for it that's not randomizer, swapper or whatever the word they use for it.
This is how you can find out that not all fantasies are final.
Yes, that's how you find out that not all fantasies are final. Actually, I don't know if BizHawk runs PS2. It might.
Oh, so well.
Yeah. If not, whatever. D. I gotta play D.
D. Okay, I love Kenji Ino. I love D. D is not a good game, but you should play D.
I mean, that's a lot of things where it's like, I love things, but like they're not good.
Well, like to me, like
right,
like it's just too dated. I think for multi standards, because I think as a historical object, D is awesome. Like Jules, I don't know if you're familiar with Kenji Ino or D. Kenji Ino is this baller game auteur in the '90s that was just a really tour de force of personality and really had really interesting ideas about games, and like in Japan for like I believe it was D, every collector's edition of like a special edition, he like personally delivered to people's houses. And this is a game that like was like on like the Sega Saturn and like the PlayStation 1. And he's like he's like here you go. But one of the famous stories about D that I love is that in the US, he was afraid that the game was going to be rated M, and it wouldn't get as much distribution as being like a T-rated game or something like that. And he knew that the masters of the game had to be hand dropped off. So he told all of like the rating board and like publisher people and everything, this is the approved version that had the cuts. And then he delayed the actual like approval process of like handing them the game. And so he like literally handed them a burnt disc of the lace build that went straight to the printing press that was uncensored. And so he got away with all of the stuff that would have been cut or gave the game a higher rating just by knowing how the process worked and abusing it, basically.
That is great.
Kenji
It
Ino
sounds like a really fun story, honestly.
Yeah, no, Kenji Ino has a bunch of stories like that. He's unfortunately passed away due to cancer in the early 2010s, I want to say. No, heart failure, that's right.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's another like genre of like that is me a lot of times with like adventure games where I have a very strong affection, especially for kind of early 2000s, early aughts, like very serious, some often FMV like horror adventure games, but I do not want to play them.
You just love the aesthetics.
Yeah, I'll tell people I love Phantasmagoria: Puzzle of Flesh like immensely.
Yeah.
Never played it in my life.
Oh yeah.
But I have seen plenty of other people play just because I just got to think about Phantasmagoria sometimes.
Yeah. It's a hard game to recommend because of content, but in a similar way, I love Harvester. If you're familiar with that name. Yeah.
People like Harvester. They're like, it's weird to see like Harvester like kind of come back.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the neat thing about emulation and like piracy is like now people like Harvester did not come up through like the cultural consciousness, you know. It's
no one would not know about Harvester. No one would not know. No one would know about Harvester if it wasn't for piracy.
Right.
Just straight up, yeah.
It's not a game like say like whatever like in Eco or whatever that's like carried through, or even like let's say Baldur's Gate, 2 that gets like, oh no, this is the thing that's critically carried through the ages to the modern era.
Yeah.
It's things that get like rediscovered within the modern era of like this freaky little FMV horror game that is tasteless.
Now
but
published by Night Dive.
yeah, right. That's we need more like weirdo like people like I like that there's more of that happening more often of the video game equivalent of like the director who just really liked this weird kung fu movie he saw as a child and is like, I want this to be accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And seeing more of like bringing forward, but you gotta bring back.
No, well, and like boutique Blu-ray labels and stuff
Yeah.
like Vinegar Syndrome and different things are doing that the film equivalent, but it's so hard to do that gamically because games have to be programmed and
Right.
and you have to make emulators for new environments or port the games, and it's just such more of an ask to do this than it is like to just the process of like, which still is definitely cost intensive and tedious
Right.
for film, because if you're doing like a remaster you have to actually like scan the frames and all that, but there's at least like a process and conversion that is not platform beholden. Like you don't have to reprogram every movie every time you want to watch it.
Right.
Whereas like
it's the problem we have where we just need to have a box that just has emulators on it,
yeah
It's like, and they don't need to be like, it'd be nice if they had like the perfect, like your FPGA, whatever, here's the perfect version of it. But also like having an imperfect version of it, but games being more accessible is also like fine.
Totally. I think part of the problem with solutions like that too is that they're then sold to niche hobbyists
Right.
rather than every person, because like I can't even think of what it's called. There's like a console that's out right now exactly like what you're talking about that like actually has physical carts. It's all emulation based, and I cannot think of what it's called whatsoever right now.
Right. But I think a lot of those are also like proprietary,
Totally. Yeah. It is. You have to have the rights sold to them or something like that to do it. It's not just
I saw someone was like, oh, look at these people, they're doing this cool thing of like publishing like oh, they're making their, like they even stole Criterion's log line or whatever about like the preservation.
Evercade.
Yes.
What I'm thinking of. Yeah.
That's probably the same one I'm thinking of. Maybe. I don't know. Oh, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's like, these very, putting them on carts and these, but it's like the problem with all these things is like CDI was right. I'm pointing at no camera. CDI was right in that you should you should have a platform and allow everyone to make the box that plays the platform.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, that's like, if Philips wants to make one, if Sony wants to make one, whatever, let everyone make one of these.
Please, that would be better.
But like the fact that like, this Evercade thing is cool, but like I bet I have to own like Evercade's proprietary hardware to do it right.
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
Which is like, I have to buy their like proprietary little. Do they have like an actual? These are arcade cabinets. No, I just want a box. Yeah.
It was originally a handheld that they then made a standalone like TV unit.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, I see that. I mean, that could be it, but you know what? It would be really cool if it played fucking just USB sticks. like why make even if like their Evercade carts were like a really fancy like shell for a USB stick, like they should just be playing USB sticks. Like that's the solution is not 80 proprietary boxes. It's like one box that everybody can anyway. This is my soapbox. You give me a lot of money. This is the thing that I want to do is make these non-proprietary boxes that if you want to load your if you want to have a thing that has Broken Sword on it, yeah, go ahead. You can use it. You can put it in my box, and you too can play the GBA port of Broken Sword, which I've played through, of course.
Of course.
If you haven't played, yeah, that's the other. I haven't played that's the example. I don't play a lot of adventure games, but I've played Broken Sword Shadow of the Templars like 2 or 3 times, maybe. It just kind of
you can play it again. It's getting remastered again for the PS4 and modern consoles. So
what does that even mean? What do they anyway? What are they remastering? How many more pixels does he need?
a lot. I think they are redrawing some of it. I don't know.
But the first one looked fine.
It's like the second remaster of that game then, because they did it around the PC Wii era.
Yeah, they did. I mean, but that's actually I like the people who actually do keep putting their stuff out constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Who do try to keep their catalog in like heavy circulation. I remember like well past its lifespan, you could still buy like PS1 copies of Square games like off their actual website.
Oh yeah, and they did it so long they were like the last people selling PlayStation discs, and
Yeah.
so they actually have clear backs rather than the dark disc rings. That,
Yeah, so
most
like
games have.
that, I feel like they're maybe as far as like huge companies, they're probably one of the better, if not the best people of like actually continually keeping their stuff in publication.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to pull up the number. There was a study by the Video Game History Foundation because they were trying to change copyright law so institutions can get remote access to video games, which you
Right.
surprisingly can't right now. And they found that 87% of games are out of print.
Right. It's like
It's just
an
you
Oh.
just can't play like 87% of games like legally. That's crazy.
Right.
You know?
And most of them are like probably considered to be like classics of the medium. And like
Yeah.
imagine if
Especially, it is very weird for a medium so like recent on anything. Honestly,
like the last time I was surprised that like an album was unavailable was like I think you cannot currently. I think it's fully. I think like Trout Mask Replica is currently completely out of print and like not streaming anywhere entirely.
A Trout Mouse Replica? Really?
I think so, and
I
that was
bought
like
that a few years ago for Record Store Day in college, a reprint. So I don't know.
I
Maybe.
mean, yeah, but that was one of those things of like, oh wait, is that just? But also like there's been a million printings of it, so it's like
You can pre-order a new print of it that ships out this past week. So there
okay,
you go.
so it's coming back again.
Yeah, there you go.
Which
Hot
is
the press, folks. If you were looking for Trout Mask Replica and you couldn't find it, well,
there's also a billion. It's been reprinted a billion times since like the '60s or whatever. So you can.
yeah.
I'm looking at Discogs. It's from $421 is the lowest copy. No, sorry, $4.21 is the
That makes
cheapest
sense.
copy you can get there.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because it's probably a billion copies. But stuff should be printed eternally forever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's the demands
Anyway.
of capitalism, unfortunately.
yeah, right. You gotta games. They're like we gotta remaster them though. If we remaster them, we can charge $60. Yeah, they. I can go to. I'm on the Square Enix website, and if I want to buy Lord of Arcana for the PlayStation Portable, or or if I want to buy Final Fantasy X-2 on the PS2, I can do that right now.
Their shipping is absurdly expensive, though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I mean, the problem with this is, so platform holders and stuff like that
Yeah.
think, all right, well, that's people want, so we're just gonna release old games. But the problem then is consumers don't inherently care if something is old is coming
Right.
back, and people don't put in the work to actually reframe importance or even just interest to them, because like Metal Wolf Chaos, for example, like game everyone clamored for, the mech presidential FromSoft game we just mentioned. Digital Devolver did a re-release of it. It's the same game as it was on the Xbox, but just on modern platforms, and no one bought it. And it's like, well, if people really want something, they either have to show up and put their money where their mouth is, or you as a person selling this item, have to be like, you have to give them reasons to want to interact with something, because just re-releasing an old game doesn't make anyone care. Your
Right,
average
right.
person's gonna be like, whoop-de-doo, like you put out the New Zealand story again, great, that doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Now, if you say like, oh, this game was fundamental in these ways, or this is historically important in this thing, or it did X, Y, Z, or we offered this in an instance, people don't people don't curate their own re-releases, and I think you have to create interest.
Yeah.
Um,
And that they're facing up against the problem of the game canon resets every 10 years,
yes, yeah, yeah.
of like, because the critical side gets burned out and nobody lasts longer than like 5 or 10 years for the most part.
Hmm.
So you've got new
Yeah.
people and they're like, oh, these are the games that I know, and it just constantly resets itself.
Yeah,
And so we don't have like these like the same like legacies of you know historical works like other mediums have.
totally. Yeah, and it's one of those things where people don't care so much about historical importance as what it means to them today in a lot of
Right.
modern contexts. Like, it's like, well, who cares if D was really foundational or important to FMV and adventure games? It sucks to play now, so why would I ever want to play it? And like,
Right.
it's just thrown out the window, Like, and so if it's either not on your radar and people it doesn't feel good to you now, then it's just instantly disregarded. And I get that to a certain extent. You want to play games that you perceive are quality, but I think our understanding of what our industry should go beyond immediate gratitude, not gratitude, just
Yeah.
immediate fulfillment.
Right.
Yeah.
Both mechanically and historically.
And I think there
Yeah. It
are
should be
like
incentivized.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think if like just and also like letting go of that like immediate gratification understanding. Like I think some games like maybe some games are in fact very hard to go back to,
Hmm.
but some you're like, oh, you'll find yourself adjusting very quickly.
Totally. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, actually, I know how to play D like a pro. D is obtuse in a lot of different ways besides how you
Yeah.
play it.
No, totally. It has a 2-hour time limit, and if you don't beat it within 2 hours, it resets the game.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's who knows? I think games are changing more with time. Like I think
Hmm.
in 10 to 5, I think a big what I've been assuming is a big change is like I think it's easy to underestimate the fact that people growing up without seeing like the market progression in games, like the impact that has on their perception of games. Like if you grew up through the 90s or the 80s and you're like, oh, a NES looks different than a Super NES, looks different than a PlayStation, looks
Hmm.
different than the PlayStation 2. Like that changes like the graphical output and like what do you expect games to look like and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So without even touching them, you're like, oh, it's a new game. New game should look different. But now, if you're like, oh, games look like everything.
Totally. We've plateaued with improvements
Right,
to a way where it's harder to date something other than like the aesthetical trappings.
right, right, and also the resurgence of things, the resurgence of pixels and PS1 and that kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, really, and who knows how often. Yeah, I'm on the front page of Steam right now, and there's this PC98 ass game on the front page.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Stories from Soul or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It looks great.
A lot of people are like, falling back and they're, Video Tome is a lot of ways made. The engine is made to, uh, be like the kind of PC98 sort of, or it works for a lot of people. I should say rather is like a PC98 more companion to Renpai's visual novel approach.
Hmm. Yeah, with like the written parser. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
and there is people, and a lot of that is fan translations too are like where fan translations are bringing these games into people's awareness, and like giving
Totally.
people. Anyway,
Like I think, well, in the same way, it's like the way Mother 3 had ripple effects on
right.
culture. It's like people then found something outside of their lane that they weren't exposed to that then changed how we think. Like Undertale wouldn't exist if
Yes.
Mother 3 never got localized. Not, or fan translated rather.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and it is like, and then you see like these ripples of like, oh, well, where did Undertale get its ideas? And then you have a bunch of people who get a whole bunch of new Toho freaks,
Yeah.
of being like, oh, like you play a Toho game for like 30 seconds, you're like, oh, Toby Fox likes Toho.
Yeah. Oh, then also, I think one of the cool things about that is it's led to resurgences in these creators themselves. Like Yoshihiro Kimura, with the creator of Moon and Julep. One of the games that was Moon was one of the games that inspired Toby Fox to make Undertale, and now Kimura is now able to make games again because of Undertale. And
I play. If talking about games I played last year, Tulip.
One of the best games ever, in my opinion.
Tulip rules, and like, also like, I guess it's like it's one of those. I get to go. Oh, it's an adventure game, a puzzle.
I would say
game?
It's an adventure game. Yeah, no, it's an adventure game in the puzzle sense. Yeah.
But it's also like dense in its own weird 24-hour cycle and everything.
Totally. But like I said, it's people. Not to put me on a soapbox, people need to understand that mechanical friction in an experience is often done with intentionality, or can be done with intentionality, and it's okay to make something that is intentionally frustrating or creates an experience as long as that is purposefully crafted in a way that supports whatever gestation or theme that it's trying to express. And Tulip does that wonderfully. Tulip is an impressive, hard, confusing game, but that's the only way that you can talk about growing up,
right?
And if you didn't do those things, you're not talking about growing up in a way that's actually understandable, and so
of like trying to try basically fumbling your way through doing it, and
exactly,
and not understanding why the things you're doing aren't working.
But then actually building up like a knowledge base within that, and then I could talk about. I love that game. It's such a beautiful game.
That is very much it echoes when I did the pledge drive. A friend of the show, a filmmaker, Bianca Del Mar, she did like I have her do like an experimental film workshop kind of thing. And part of her intro was like, if something is boring or frustrating or confusing, consider that might be by intent,
Totally. Yeah. We need to move in games beyond the fun button. And that's something we've been so expressly gravitated towards, is that games can be pleasurable, games can be fun, games can be enjoyable, but ultimately games fundamentally are interactive experiences.
Yeah.
And if you think about that through that lens, that offers a variety of expressions and ways we can talk about moment-to-moment gameplay that isn't just driven by the idea of mechanical pleasure. And that is a hard ask, because with other mediums, like if you're doing something intentionally opaque or frustrating, you're not participating in it, you're watching it, and that's creating an experience. Games are actively asking something of you to be like, hey, I want you to do this thing. And if you find this thing impleasurable, well, then it's harder for you to want to do it because you inherently are a participant in it. So that is the thing we have to uphill fight in terms of just getting want across in the medium, is saying, hey, this builds to a bigger thing. If we are trying to express something in a certain fashion or way, and it may not always be uniform in terms of your emotional response, but that's a good thing, because games have the ability to be so much bigger than they are, and that's wonderful.
Yes.
And there is that kind of there's also there's that weirdness of if an album or a film are completely obtuse, they'll finish whether you ever understood a bit of them,
completely.
Whereas a game, you might never see anything past the first screen if you don't understand it.
Totally. Like, I mean, think about how many people didn't finish Assassin's Creed 1 just because it was super repetitive and you're doing the same thing all the
Right.
time, versus like a game that's super repetitive and asks you to do the same thing, maybe in an intentional context, is still probably going to have the same result for people,
Yeah.
because it's like a game that's trying and failing to be fun, but doing that is, while different in intentions than something that is actively trying to do that, if you as a viewer are not accustomed to that or aware or willing to engage with that, you're going to have the same result. You're going to just turn it off because, well, you've been told that this is about having fun. And honestly, you just want to have fun. You don't
Right.
want the game to be anything else.
Yeah.
And
And
once again, all games are not for all people. That's
right.
cool. We
Uh,
should know that.
I think that's where, like, Let's Plays come in handy, because listen, sometimes I'm not going to say everyone needs to play Tower of Draga, but you can watch someone play.
But historically important.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can watch someone play it and like understand it and be like, oh, this would have been really frustrating, but like I get it. There is the neatness of like obtuse puzzle solving, and like, oh, maybe it's
Yeah.
like you had to be there solving this puzzle like together.
You did. You had to have a notepad on that arcade cabinet to be
Right.
like, I am adding tips for the next person so that they can understand. And we just don't have that social context in a way that exists in the same way.
Right.
You'd have to get a group of friends being like, we're playing Tower of Jiraga. Let's do this if you wanted
Yes.
to create that experience contemporarily.
And we're gonna all figure this out together,
Yeah.
for better
And
or
make
for
sure y'all are
worse.
playing the same version. Otherwise, we have different level design.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is like, I think like that's where that kind of thing comes in handy. Of like, well, it's also much easier to play through watch someone who is an expert go through something, where you may lack the time to get the because that's the weird thing about games. Like sometimes, yeah, but also like it might encourage you to be like, huh, maybe I am going to try that now,
Totally.
where it
Well,
might
it's like Jules was saying.
yeah,
There should be a want and express for other and weirdness.
yeah,
Yeah,
That shouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
yeah,
yeah. Especially because in the end, like, think about this. If you really don't, because there is, of course, specific products for specific people and things like that. But
yeah,
even the things that you don't like, you still need to try them. And I do agree with everything you've said, that there is like a tendency on general industries of media today, which is to say this is the best thing of this genre and of this thing, and you should look into it and look into similar things.
Hmm.
Well, that's not necessarily the way that you should do things. I think you should try other things that you
Totally.
could even dislike, of course, because with that you're going to define that and you're going to know everything.
right,
Knowledge is power.
yeah, and like the kind right that kind of like algorithmic almost. If you like this, you must like this kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Like I talk about them a lot on the show, or in to a decent amount. The two films that exist in my brain that rattle around probably most often are Phantom of the Paradise and
Sick.
and Jean Dielman.
Oh, cool.
Hmm.
Cool.
And I never would get to those algorithmically. One would never get to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
But like,
could not.
they both like occupy different spaces. But like I think about like them a lot,
Mhm.
as far as movies that enter my brain. And then the third, runner up, clipping on their heels is probably Stalker. Um,
Oh, that's quite a range.
but you're right, and that's like those things don't lead into each other. But I am not a unique individual in that I like those three movies a lot.
Completely. Yeah. Yeah.
That it's
Yeah,
not like I am a bastion of good taste. It's like, well, no. It's like people. If you don't worry necessarily about being able to talk to people in the moment about that, like being able to log on to Blue Sky and immediately start talking to somebody about something,
Hmm.
or if you don't have to worry about like being in the current zeitgeist, then you'll find you'll like a lot of things that you didn't realize that you might like.
Yeah.
of
No,
course.
good game design is a series of arbitrations that people are accustomed to.
Right.
And that can help our mechanical understanding of us getting to point A to B faster. Because if something is familiar to something else that we are familiar with, we're inherently going to have an easier time adjusting to that than we would if
Yeah.
something was foreign to us. And that is what a conventional quote unquote good game design is often expressed in a way where it's like, do this in this way, do this in this way, do this way, and you have a good game. And I think there are things where, yes, in frameworks you can see where certain actions can be, as we said, more pleasurable and familiar, with feedback in the
Yeah.
feedback loop because games are experiential. I think some of that is
Yeah.
valid. But I think by making it gospel, by saying these are the only things you can do to make a good game and good experience, is where it becomes more of a limitation or a box rather than an aspiration.
Yeah.
And good game design is in, should always be pointing to what the game is trying to be in itself, because I may like Mario, but my game is not Mario,
Yeah.
And so like me striving to be exactly like Mario isn't helping my game because my game is trying to say X, Y, or Z, And so if I'm looking at Mario and going, okay, this is a good game design, this is what I should put in my game. If that's not expressly suiting my goals and needs, it's not good game design. It's not helping my game,
Right.
And
And these core game design tenets are like also not as strong as you're led to believe. Like until what if something else becomes? I think about like pre Dark Souls. No one's going to tell you should put your attack buttons on the shoulders.
yeah. Oh, people still get so mad about the Shadow of the Colossus, input system where it jumps on triangle,
Yeah.
Like jumps on X, jumps on X. Well,
Right.
who cares?
But then if
You know?
if it becomes if Shadow of the Colossus was the most popular game, suddenly every game's jump is on triangle.
No, exactly. Yeah,
It's like-
yeah. And so
Yeah.
there's some things where it's like, we can look to North Stars for guidance, but we shouldn't mimic those to a T.
Right, 'cause
Because
those-
if every game became an East-like, and if it had bump/combat,
we'd be
then
living in paradise, and we'd
play wishlist Angeline era. Shout
right.
out,
We
shout out them.
would finally see the light of heaven on our
Yeah.
But
Yeah, one would need to find like
But yes,
the
I know, yeah.
balance on development. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there was it doesn't have technically bump combat. I was gonna say there's a bump combat game, but it's not technically bump combat, because it doesn't work on angles, in issue 60. I was gonna say. 'Cause I was
There you
looking at
go.
it right now, but it's not technically bump combat because it's bumping that you're running into enemies. Bump combat requires facing in angles and all these sorts of things.
Hey, sell that copy. Sell that
Yeah.
zine to somebody.
Yes, but that's also like a thing that I experienced like in life. I had someone like, I would say about once a week or so. I'll throw in a quick name search to see if people have been talking about Indiepocalypse. Though I have the solemn promise to everyone out there that I will never respond to it, and I will treat it as invisible.
Uh-huh.
But there was someone like from Magfest who had like picked up a couple of copies of Findevi's games, Coda and Aleph, and they're kind of like these very crunchy, maximalist, kind of lo-fi puzzle adventure kind of games. And they kind of bought them sight unseen, and then they were posting on like, "Oh, check out these really I bought these cool like avant-garde puzzle games or whatever." And I had someone who like on Friday bought one, and then on Saturday came back down. And he's like, give me another. We booted up in our hotel room.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And like there's a couple here or there that I would say are normal, but like as contributors, Indiepocalypse is weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is like stuff like off the beaten path. Like we weren't joking. There is literally a DVD game in 61. Like in order to play it on your PC, you have to load up like VLC or something. It's so it is like people are into weird stuff, and they always will be, and like the weird stuff kind of lasts longer too.
people are into weird stuff because it comes from somewhere genuine and is an expression of someone. You
Yeah.
know, like be expressive with your work.
Right. Speaking of,
Indeed.
Angelina era, it's that idea of like alive games and dead games,
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Ooh.
of like, you know, does this feel like a person made it?
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of things people made, we've made this show for like about 2 hours,
Hooray!
um, which is like we get to the point of like, have we gone for 2 hours? And how much is Andrew thinking about food? Like, the more I start to think about food, the more I'm like, we gotta end this show.
You know, if you think about it, food is the indie game of
Yeah,
your stomach.
it is the indie game of my stomach. You're right. But before as we start to wrap up, do either of you have any non-promotional final statements, questions, or things like that you want to get out?
Play cool games.
Okay.
Extremely nice. Very, very good statement. I would also say play cool games, but another thing that I did not mention on my hometown, a particular traditional dish is pizza with yogurt.
Oh,
What kind of yogurt?
Yeah,
I'm a little afraid of that, honestly.
yes, yes, it is kind of scary. It is how do you say it? Strawberry yogurt. Actually, it is very weird, but it is something that
Like
exists on my hometown.
Okay.
with a tomato sauce, or is it like a dessert pizza?
No, no, pepperoni pizza with strawberry yogurt.
Interesting.
Okay. Now I am you you say this, but there's a I've gotten pizza from a combination pizza Indian place, and they made like a tikka masala pizza, and it was like I think about it all the time.
Yeah, it's
Of
not that bad, honestly.
like
If
this.
you really want to try it, go to Jalapa,
Okay.
Veracruz, Jalapa.
Well,
Okay, all right.
I am going to Amaze. Maybe I can make a stop in Spain. Maybe.
Yeah, that
Probably
would
not.
be my final statement. Play
Uh,
cool games, play physical
Play
games
uncool
also.
games. Play
Yes.
uncool games too.
Now, speaking of cool games, both of you make cool games, and now we get to the crucial part of like, where can people find your cool games? Colton, I'll start with you.
Oh, cool. Games. Well, you can find my cool game right now on Indiepocalypse 61, hot off the presses.
Yes.
If you're interested, it's called Welcome Universe. If you think anything I said was cool, well, then check it out. In terms of future projects, keep me up on Blue Sky. I think it's 1997 Oldsmobile. I
Yes,
think. You can
yes.
search my name. Or my itch page, which is Ninja President something on itch. I don't know how itch URLs work.
That's it. .itch.io.
Oh, cool. There you go. Sick. That is a Bad Dudes reference that I made when I was 5. So,
Sometimes you make a reference when you're 5, you're stuck with it forever.
that's unfortunately where we're at. So,
But if you
no, I have some things I'm working on. Hopefully, one of them will come out this year, and one is just in the process. So we'll see. I'm making games.
Perfect. Jules, where can people find your games if you want them to find your games?
Of course, of course. Firstly, you can find my specific game that is on the Indiepocalypse. That is Pareidolia, Evil Eye specifically. Uh, issue number 51. You can find it on itch.io and under my profile called Jules Ampere, Jules Ampere, basically. I don't have any more like social media. Well, I do, but I don't use them. So
That's hey
yeah,
you
that would
you
be.
and me both. I
Yes. Also, thank you, Colton, for the following. I really need to take those down.
Go, no, appreciate it. Yeah, I had some LARP games I made in college with some friends that we ran that were pretty cool. And yeah, in terms of the solo dev stuff, I'm just really getting my name out there. Most of my stuff's been unreleased or with friends on different things. So we'll see.
yeah. And it's I mean that's a lot of like As they mentioned before, purchase. If you go to Indiepocalypse.com, you can purchase Indiepocalypse, which is a good place to purchase Indiepocalypse. A very handy way to do it. But
And you should.
yes.
You should.
But I've also been offline, as I mentioned during the show, simply because I do so much better at events, and
Yeah.
it feels like you kind of just got to be online a lot in order to be online, or people want you to be online all the time, in order to care about you. I think maybe, I don't know. It seems exhausting. I'm not going to try and parse it and figure it out. I'm just gonna post 4 to 5 times a month when I do a thing, and then not even open a social media website otherwise. It doesn't seem to meaningfully impact the work that I do.
Yeah. If you were never there, it doesn't really matter, honestly.
I spent a lot of time really trying to get people to pay attention. It didn't seem to do a lot. But now I've also spent 5 years building up this weird little monolith. Not monolith, but monolith in the sense that it's a large figure.
Mini list.
It's a thing that you can see in space and recognize as a thing, is what I mean. A fixture. A fixture is what it is. Because so often that question, when I ask people, where do they find it? They go, "Oh, it's just a thing that I know exists."
Oh yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I said.
They're like, I don't know where it came from. It's ever approaching a point where people's like, "Oh, it's a thing that just kind of always existed." Which is a good thing for me. But if you're one of those people, go to indiepocalypse.com/submit, and if you're making a game, or if you're gonna make a game in the future, it's the weirdness of when I've been doing this for 5 years. There's some people who were going into college that were 13 when Indiepocalypse started coming out, and if they're submitting college projects, it's been a long time coming, or a long time going, a long time existing. That's it. Patreon also /Patreon. You can subscribe there. You can also get new games.
Go to Patreon.
Yeah, you can get new games there if you wanted to get exclusively the newly commissioned games. You can do that for $5 a month, which is I think a bargain if you're looking to get cool games by the cool people making cool games within this alternative experimental space. That's it. I got nothing else to say. Shutting it down. Colton, Jules, thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you in the zine, on the show, hanging around, all that stuff. Oh, I was like, what are all these notifications? It is you posting within here.
Yeah, sorry. I just did a few things along.
It is, but it was the things I was thinking about. So,
the Eternal Ring back covers the first link.
Yes,
that's all fantasies. Yeah,
I looked that one up myself
really
as well. But yes, that's it. I think. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Nice meeting you all.
Yeah.
No, of course. Yeah.